Alright folks, get comfy and maybe grab a cozy blanket, because tonight we're diving into one of the wildest tales in Greek mythology. I'm talking about the story of Perseus and Medusa, the hero who literally beheaded a snake-haired monster and then used that head as a weapon. It's a pretty crazy ride, full of prophecies, gods meddling in human affairs, monsters, and a bunch of really questionable parenting decisions. But I'll try to keep it chill and just tell it like a friend who loves this stuff. Okay? So, our story begins in the ancient Greek city of Argos. Argos was a prosperous and venerable kingdom in those days, one of the oldest Greek city-states. It was ruled by a king named Acrisius. Now Acrisius was a king who had pretty much everything except one major thing: a son. This guy really wanted a male heir, patriarchy, and all that classic ancient world problems. Instead, he only had a daughter, the princess Danae. Don't get me wrong, he loved Danae, at least in most versions of the myth, but apparently having a daughter wasn't enough for him. He was worried about the future of his kingdom since he had no prince to pass the throne to. In true dramatic fashion, Acrisius decides to consult the famous Oracle of Delphi. The oracle, the ancient Greek go-to for freaking out kings with cryptic prophecies. Acrisius asks the oracle something along the lines of, "Will I ever have a son or at least a male heir to secure my legacy?" And the oracle basically says, "Nope. In fact, your daughter Danae will have a son, and that son is destined to kill you." Oof, not what our guy Acrisius wanted to hear at all. Talk about a bad day at the oracle. Acrisius might have been like, "Wait, what about me having a son, though?" Did the oracle just skip over that part? But no, the prophecy was clear, and it was even worse than no son. It was essentially, your grandson will be your doom. If Greek myths have taught us anything, it's that trying to outsmart or escape a prophecy is real risky. Usually the more you struggle, the more you just ensure the prophecy comes true. But of course, humans and mythological kings never learn. Acrisius hears this prophecy and absolutely panics. In fact, he's so terrified that he starts considering some extreme ideas. One might think he could simply eliminate his daughter to prevent any son from ever being born. Yikes, talk about dark thoughts. But killing your own child was something even Acrisius was hesitant to do in Greek culture. Murdering family was a one-way ticket to being cursed by the Furies, vengeful spirits, and angering the gods. So he decides on a slightly less horrific but still terribly cruel alternative. His solution: essentially lock up his daughter so she can never meet any men, and therefore never have a son. If there's no grandson, there's nobody to kill him, right? Foolproof plan. Or so he thinks. He ordered a special prison to be built for Danae. Some versions say it was a tower of solid bronze. Others say it was an underground bronze chamber beneath the palace courtyard. Either way, it was basically an impenetrable cell. Imagine being sealed in a room with bronze walls, hardly any light aside from maybe a small grated window or a slit in the ceiling for air. He may have allowed a nurse or her old nanny to attend her, to bring food and such, but otherwise Danae was completely isolated from the world. No men were ever getting in there, period, or so Acrisius thought. It's a pretty grim life for Danae. She's stuck in this shiny bronze cell with no freedom or company aside from the occasional visit from a maid to bring food. Day after day, she's left with nothing to do but stare at bronze walls and imagine the outside world. I always imagined Danae might have been questioning her dad's sanity at this point. Like, gee, thanks dad, this is way better than, living a normal life out in the sunshine. But hey, kings and myths are not exactly models of rational thinking. So time goes by, and Danae is languishing in her bronze solitary confinement. And here comes one of those weird and famous moments in Greek mythology. Zeus gets involved. Yes, Zeus, king of the gods, notorious for his extracurricular activities with mortal women. Zeus apparently notices Danae, perhaps he heard her praying, or just peeped down from Olympus. Being king of gods comes with great surveillance capabilities, I guess. And Zeus is like, wow, that Danae chick is really beautiful. Shame she's all locked up like that. But hey, Zeus, no mere bronze walls are gonna stop me. And sure enough, one day Danae's solitude is interrupted by something truly bizarre. A warm golden light fills her chamber, and actual drops of gold start raining down from the ceiling. I should mention, this moment became a favorite subject for many painters centuries later. They loved the imagery of a beautiful woman and a shower of gold. Go figure. In mythic terms, this was Zeus making his grand entrance. The god literally poured his essence into her locked room in the form of golden rain, slipping right through any small opening in that bronze prison. Now, how does golden rain lead to a baby? Your guess is as good as mine. Let's just say Zeus can do whatever he wants, and apparently being a sparkly magical rain cloud counts. 1 minute Danae is alone in her chamber. The next minute she's enveloped by this golden shimmering cloud pouring down on her, and somehow she finds herself in the embrace of Zeus. Greek mythology, folks. It's bizarre. And yes, many scholars and modern readers have raised eyebrows at the consent issues here, understandably. The myths often gloss over that stuff, but it's there between the lines. Anyway, the end result is Danae gets pregnant by Zeus during that glittery visitation. She gives birth to a baby boy, our hero, Perseus. His name would become famous, but at that moment he was just a tiny, innocent newborn with a rather perilous future hanging over him. Not that Danae could really worry about prophecy at that point. She was likely just focused on keeping the baby safe. For a while, Acrisius doesn't know about the baby. Danae probably tried to keep it secret as long as possible. Imagine her desperately shushing infant Perseus whenever he cried. Because if Dad finds out, it's trouble. But secrets like that are hard to keep. Eventually, Acrisius hears the telltale cries of an infant echoing from the bronze chamber or notices something is up. He discovers baby Perseus with Danae, and he's shocked and furious. Herace, his daughter, who was supposed to never even see a man, somehow sitting there with a child, a son, no less, and he's like, what the heck happened? Who dared break into my bronze vault? I imagine Danae probably stammered something like, Dad, it was Zeus, in golden rain form. Not sure Acrisius believed that. Would you? If your kid said, I got pregnant by a magic golden cloud, you'd probably go, excuse me? Whether or not Acrisius believes the whole Zeus did it story, one thing is clear. There is a grandson now, the very one the oracle warned him about. And Acrisius absolutely loses it. At this point, you'd think maybe Acrisius would consider, not doing something horrible and maybe just trying to be a decent grandpa so that fate might go easier on him. But nope, Acrisius, being consistently extra, decides he still needs to get rid of Danae and her baby. He's too afraid to directly murder them. Again, kinslaying curse, plus maybe some remaining shred of fatherly love. So he opts for what he sees as a hands-clean method. He has a large wooden chest, like a big box or crate, constructed. Then he puts his daughter and infant grandson inside, nails it shut, and orders his men to toss that chest into the sea. Essentially, he's thinking, I'm not killing them outright. I'll let the sea or the gods decide their fate. If they die, well, that's totally not on me, right? It's a cowardly and cruel move. Basically an ancient Greek version of let's leave them on a doorstep, except the doorstep is the open ocean and it's almost certain death. Acrisius might felt this absolved him of guilt, but come on. Setting your daughter and grandkid adrift on the waves is pretty cold. Now picture that scene. Danae, clutching baby Perseus tightly, in this cramped wooden chest as it gets heaved over the side of a ship. She must have been absolutely terrified. I always picture that moment. The Princess of Argos hugging her infant son, trapped in a wooden chest bobbing away on the wine-dark sea. She feels it rocking violently with the waves. It's dark, water seeping in through the planks. The baby is crying. Honestly, it's like something out of a horror story. I wouldn't be surprised if Danae was praying to the gods, especially Zeus, to save them in that desperate hour. Acrisius stands on the shore watching as the chest disappears into the distance, probably telling himself he's done the right thing to thwart fate, while all of us listening are like, bad move, dude. You just angered so many gods. But this is Greek mythology, and when gods are involved, there's often some divine intervention. Perseus isn't just any baby. He's the son of Zeus, and Zeus isn't about to let his newborn demi-son drown without a fight. So, as the chest is tossed around by the winds and waves, the gods ensure that it stays afloat. By either calm weather or perhaps Poseidon's subtle help, since Poseidon is the god of the sea and might do his brother Zeus a solid here, the chest miraculously does not sink. Danae and little Perseus survive, bobbing along in this wooden prison for days, maybe even weeks. Eventually, and this is where fate shows its kinder side, the big wooden chest washes ashore on an island called Seriphos. Seriphos was a far cry from the bustling city of Argos. It's one of the smaller, maybe less prosperous islands in the Aegean, the Cyclades Islands. The name Seriphos actually means barren or rocky, so not exactly paradise. But to Danae, that shoreline must have been the most beautiful sight in the world because it meant land, it meant survival. By sheer chance or divine arrangement, a fisherman named Dictys is walking along the beach that day, or perhaps out casting his nets in the surf. Dictys, whose name, fittingly, means netman in Greek, spots this big chest bobbing in the shallow water or stranded on the sand. Maybe he thinks it's treasure. Who wouldn't be curious? He goes over, manages to pry it open, and inside he finds, of all things, a frightened woman and a crying baby, alive and human. You can imagine his astonishment. What in Zeus' name? Dictys is a good guy, like truly one of the unsung nice guys of mythology. Some versions say Dictys is actually the brother of the king of the island. We'll get to that king in a sec, but he's a humble fisherman by trade. He gently helps Danae and Perseus out of the chest, gives them food, clothing, shelter, all the basic kindnesses they desperately need. He listens to Danae's story. I'm sure his jaw was on the floor hearing about the whole golden rain and murderous father ordeal, and he takes them in without hesitation. Essentially, Dictys becomes Perseus' foster father figure, raising the boy as his own and protecting both mother and child. So Perseus grows up on Seriphos, safe and sound for the moment. Thanks to Dictys, he has a relatively normal childhood. We can imagine little Perseus helping his foster dad with fishing, running around the rocky shores, learning to swim in the Aegean waves. Being Zeus' son, maybe Perseus showed signs of being special, perhaps unusually strong or brave. But importantly, he had a loving mother and a kind father figure, away from the murderous schemes of his grandfather. Danae, after all the trauma, must have been immensely grateful to Dictys and probably tried to live a low-profile life on this quiet island. Years pass, and Perseus grows from a cute kid into a strong young man. Enter the next complication: Polydectes, the king of Seriphos. Polydectes is actually Dictys' brother, but unlike Dictys, he's not a nice guy. In fact, Polydectes is kind of a sleazeball. His name literally means receiver of many, as in receiver of many gifts or people, which is fitting because he's greedy and expects tribute. Polydectes eventually notices Danae. How could he not? She's a former princess of Argos and by all accounts still very beautiful. Polydectes develops an infatuation, or rather, an obsessive lust, for Danae and decides he must have her. Danae, however, is not interested. She's had enough of powerful men making her life hell, and Polydectes is basically the island tyrant, not exactly hubby material. Plus, by this time Perseus is a young adult, very protective of his beloved mother. Polydectes finds that he can't get anywhere with Danae, partly because Perseus is always by her side giving the king a wary eye. The king grows frustrated. He's the ruler of this island, used to getting what he wants, and here's this woman daring to refuse him and her annoying son blocking the way. Polydectes realizes that as long as Perseus is around, he can't force Danae into anything. So he cooks up a scheme to remove Perseus from the equation. And oh man, what a scheme it is, both clever and incredibly evil. In one telling, Polydectes actually gathers everyone for a big banquet at the palace and announces that he's going to marry a certain noblewoman. Some versions name her as Hippodamia, though that might just be a generic name he threw out. Whether or not this marriage is real or just a ruse, who knows? The point is, Polydectes uses it to play a trick on Perseus. He demands that all his subjects bring wedding gifts. Specifically, he says, "I'm collecting fine horses as gifts for my bride-to-be." Horses were extremely valuable, and asking for horses is basically asking your subjects for a show of wealth and loyalty. Now, Perseus isn't a rich noble. He's essentially a fisherman's adopted son. He doesn't have a horse to give. So when Polydectes starts collecting gifts, Perseus is in an awkward spot. In this public gathering, Polydectes pointedly asks Perseus what he will contribute. Perseus, not wanting to look bad in front of everyone, and perhaps being a bit prideful, blurts out that he can offer something far more impressive than a horse. In the heat of the moment, he boasts that he will bring the head of Medusa as a gift for the king. Medusa, let that sink in. This is not some random trinket. Medusa is one of the most fearsome creatures in Greek myth. Her name alone struck fear. She's one of the 3 Gorgon sisters, a monstrous woman with living snakes for hair and a gaze that can turn anyone who looks at her to stone. She's basically a nightmare given form. To even suggest hunting her is both incredibly brave and incredibly foolish. The palace hall falls silent at Perseus' proclamation. I imagine all the gathered nobles and islanders just gaping. Did that kid just say, "Head, fetch Medusa's head"? Even Polydectes, who probably engineered this moment, pretends to be astonished. But inside, the king is gleeful. This is exactly what he wanted. Perseus has taken the bait and essentially signed up for a suicide mission. Polydectes, hiding a smirk, says, "Magnificent! What a gift that would be! By all means, Perseus, I will gladly accept the head of Medusa as my wedding present." In that moment, Perseus likely experiences a jolt of "what did I just do?" But his pride and honor are now on the line. He vowed to bring Medusa's head in front of everyone. There's no backing out. If he does, he'd be labeled a coward and lose face. Plus, Polydectes would probably find another way to get rid of him anyway. Perseus, being the honorable son of Zeus that he is, resolves to actually go through with it. I always feel a mix of excitement and dread for Perseus at this point. Excitement because, hey, hero on a monster-slaying quest. This is what legends are made of. Dread because, well, his odds seem terrible. Even he must be thinking, how the heck am I going to pull this off? Medusa isn't exactly easy prey. Direct attempts to face her usually end with a nice statue collection. Nonetheless, the very next day or soon after, Perseus prepares to set out on his quest to slay Medusa and bring back her head. Polydectes is probably grinning ear to ear, thinking, good riddance. Danae is distraught. Losing her son to this suicidal quest is her worst nightmare. But Perseus likely assures her that he'll be fine, that the gods will guide him. Little does he know how right he is about that part. At this point, Perseus is basically on his own. How do you even start looking for Medusa? She lives at the ends of the earth somewhere. No Google Maps for Gorgon lairs in those days. So Perseus does what any sensible hero would. He prays and asks for help. And lo and behold, help comes in the form of 2 very important gods, Athena and Hermes. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, among other things, has a personal stake here. Remember how I mentioned some myths say Medusa once offended Athena? In one version, Medusa was a beautiful maiden who either boasted she was more beautiful than Athena or, in a darker twist, was assaulted by Poseidon in Athena's temple. Either way, Athena was furious and cursed Medusa, turning her into the snake-haired monster we know. So Athena harbors a serious grudge against Medusa, guiding Perseus to take Medusa down? Oh, Athena is very on board with that plan. Hermes, the messenger god and god of travelers, thieves, etc., also shows up to assist. Hermes is actually Perseus' half-brother. Both are sons of Zeus, though in myths they don't dwell on that. Let's say Hermes just has a soft spot for helping heroes on quests. Plus, Hermes is the patron of travelers, and Perseus is about to be on one heck of a journey. I like to picture the scene. Perseus is alone on a beach or in a quiet meadow, gearing up to start wandering the world for Medusa, when suddenly these 2 radiant figures appear. Athena, in full armor with her shield and helmet, and Hermes, lightly armed with his winged sandals and caduceus, and probably a sly grin. Perseus must have been awestruck. The gods themselves have come to help. Athena and Hermes equip Perseus with some crucial magical gear, essentially turning this into the first recorded hero gets a gadget upgrade montage. Hey race, what they give him. A polished bronze shield. From Athena, this isn't just any shield. It's like a highly reflective mirror. Athena instructs Perseus to use the shiny shield to see Medusa indirectly. Look at her reflection, not at her directly, Athena advises. That way, he won't be turned to stone by her gaze. It's a genius hack, fighting a gaze weapon by using a mirror. Gamers, Think of it like using a mirror shield to reflect a basilisk stare or something. An adamantine sword, from Hermes some describe it as a harp, a special curved blade. Adamantine means supernaturally hard, like the ancient Greek concept of unbreakable metal, the root of the word adamant. This sword can cut through just about anything, including, presumably, Medusa's scaly neck. It's often depicted as a short, curved sword, almost like a sickle. With this, Perseus can actually hope to behead a Gorgon, whose body might be as tough as armor. Winged sandals, from Hermes, these are basically the coolest flying shoes ever. Hermes often wears winged sandals himself, and in some versions he lends his own to Perseus. In others, he directs Perseus to where he can find a spare set. In any case, with these sandals, Perseus can fly. Yup, flights before the Wright brothers. Just strap on some divine air Hermes and you're airborne. This will be super important for getting to Medusa, who lives in who knows where, and for making quick getaways. A special sack/wallet, the kibisis. Athena, or Hermes, tells Perseus hell needs something to safely contain Medusa's head once he cuts it off, because that head will still be just as deadly after it's detached. The kibisis is essentially a sturdy bag that can be sealed up. Think of it as a hazardous materials container for a radioactive item. Medusa's head is like nuclear waste with eyes. You need to cover and contain it when you're not using it, so you don't accidentally petrify the neighborhood. The nymphs will later provide this bag, but the gods make sure Perseus knows about it. The cap of Hades, a helmet that grants invisibility. Now, this one sometimes is given by Hermes right away, or sometimes by other entities later. We'll get there. But the idea is that Perseus will have access to Hades' helm of darkness, which can make him unseen, invaluable for sneaking around deadly monsters or making a stealthy escape. Athena and Hermes basically give Perseus a pep talk and a game plan. To find Medusa, he can't just wander aimlessly. He needs directions. They instruct him to seek out the Gree, also called the Grey Sisters, who are Medusa's own weird sisters. Well, they're sisters of the Gorgons. The Gree are these three old crones who share one single eye and one single tooth between them. Yeah, imagine three wrinkly aunties passing an eyeball around. One pops it in to take a look, then hands it off to the next. They do the same with a tooth when they want to chew. It's both creepy and a little comedic. The Gree know secret information, specifically the location of certain nymphs who hold the remaining items Perseus will need, like that kibisis and Hades cap, and the general whereabouts of Medusa and her sisters. So, armed with his shiny shield and unbreakable sword, and guided by divine advice, Perseus sets off to find the Gree. This journey takes him to the very edges of the known world. The Gree live in a perpetually dim land, some say near where night and day meet. After much travel, imagine Perseus flying over mountains and deserts with those winged sandals. He reaches the abode of the Gree, and they are exactly as advertised. Three gray-haired, withered old sisters, huddled around maybe a fire or a cave, and between the three of them there's just one eye and one tooth that they pass around. At any given moment, two are blind and toothless and one can see or eat. It's bizarre and kind of pitiful. Now, Perseus has to be clever here. The Gree aren't villains per se, but they're not friendly, and they are loyal to their Gorgon sisters. They're certainly not going to willingly tell Perseus how to find Medusa, so he employs a little trickery. While one of the Gree is passing the eye to another, Perseus darts forward and snatches the eye right out of their hands. Perhaps he also snags their tooth for good measure, depriving them of both sight and speech, since without the tooth maybe they slur horribly. Immediately, the three old women realize their eye is gone and they erupt into panic. One screeches to the other, "Sister, don't be a hog. Give me the eye." And the other yells, "I did give it to you. You dropped it, you fool." And then, realizing a stranger has taken it, they all start shrieking to the unseen thief. In their one voice, picture a creepy chorus. They cry out, "Whoever you are, give us back our eye." They are completely blind now, flailing around in distress. Perseus coolly steps aside, holding the eyeball out of their reach. He says, "I'll give it back after you help me. Hey, race the deal. I need directions, how to find the nymphs who guard the treasures I need, and where to find Medusa. You tell me what I want to know, and I'll return your eye. If not, Well, I might just toss it into the sea over there. The Gree wail and plead. These old gals are terrified. That eye is their most precious possession. They have no choice. Begrudgingly, they agree to trade information for their eye. Instantly, once Perseus has their promise, they start babbling everything they know. Go to the river ocean in the far west. Seek the nymphs of the evening. They will give you what you seek. And Medusa dwells beyond, in the land where night reigns, etc. Perseus listens carefully, making them be specific. Perhaps Athena's voice in his head is like, ask them about the cap and sandals, though he has those sandals from Hermes already. Once he has the info he needs, Perseus is true to his word. He isn't cruel by nature, he just needed leverage. So he tosses the eye back to them. The poor Gree scramble on the ground until one of them grabs it and pops it back into her socket. Suddenly they see Perseus for the first time, probably just the blur of him speeding away with winged sandals, and they scream curses at him for tricking them. But by then, Perseus is already well on his way. In some versions, Perseus actually doesn't give the eye back. He throws it into a lake so they can never retrieve it. But that's a bit mean, and our guy Perseus is generally portrayed as honorable, so let's stick with him returning it after its use. Following the directions from the Gree, Perseus next finds the nymphs, sometimes identified as the Hesperides or Stygian nymphs. These are benevolent beings, often guardians of magical artifacts. The nymphs live even further toward the edge of the world, near where Atlas holds up the sky. When Perseus arrives, these nymphs welcome him. He's a son of Zeus on a big quest. After all, the nymphs provide him with the remaining gear he needs. The cap of Hades, also called the Helm of Darkness. When Perseus puts this on, he can become invisible. Total stealth mode. This is crucial for sneaking up on Medusa and especially for getting away if needed. The helm originally belongs to Hades, but the nymphs have it on loan. The gods seem to pass around magical items when it suits them. The winged sandals, if Hermes hadn't given him a pair already if he didn't have them yet. The nymphs present him with a beautiful pair of sandals fitted with wings. Now Perseus can zoom through the air like a bird, or like Hermes himself. In our story, Hermes already handed over his own pair or arranged it, so Perseus is doubly set to fly. The kibisis, special bag, the nymphs give Perseus a sturdy, magically secure satchel. Think of it like a god-grade Ziploc or a lead-line box. This is for carrying Medusa's severed head safely. With this, Perseus won't accidentally turn himself or bystanders to stone while carrying the head around. It's like they foresaw the need for proper hazardous material handling. Safety first, even in mythology. The nymphs, being friendly, likely offer Perseus refreshments, wish him luck, maybe even give him a warm cloak for the road. Who knows? Perseus thanks them sincerely. He's now fully kitted out. An invisible cap wearing, winged sandals flying, sharp sword wielding hero with a shiny shield and a magic bag. If this were a video game, he'd have just gotten all the legendary items needed for the final boss. Now it's time for the ultimate showdown, Medusa. Medusa and her two sisters, Steno and Euryale, live way out beyond the ocean, on an island at the edge of the world. The land there is often described as desolate, think rocky terrain, perhaps a distant temple or a cave where the Gorgons reside. As Perseus nears this area, the atmosphere becomes eerie. The ground is littered with stone statues, the petrified remains of past adventurers, heroes, or hapless souls who stumbled upon the Gorgons. It's like an outdoor statuary, except these statues are not art. They're the victims of Medusa's deadly gaze. Seeing those, Perseus must have gulped. It's a very clear warning. Turn back now, or you'll become one of these stones. No pressure, Perseus. Now let's talk about the Gorgons a bit. There are three sisters, Steno, Euryale, and Medusa. Steno and Euryale are immortal. They cannot be killed, even if someone tried. Medusa, however, is mortal. Why? Possibly just so this story can happen. Even the myths kind of hand-wave it with, well, otherwise Perseus couldn't slay her. All three are absolutely horrifying in appearance. We're talking scales covering their bodies like dragon hide, brass claws, sharp fangs like boar's tusks, and of course the signature hairdos. A writhing mass of venomous snakes instead of normal hair. To top it off, in many depictions they also have golden wings. And those eyes, those terrible eyes, meet their gaze and you're done, turned to stone forever in an instant. It's often wondered, how do the Gorgon sisters themselves not petrify each other by accident? Maybe they're immune to their own power, or maybe they have an understanding to keep their eyes averted from one another. Either way, they clearly manage to live together without incident, though the thought of them waking up in the morning and trying not to groggily look each other in the face is strangely amusing, like Morning Medusa, Morning Euryale, both staring firmly at the floor. But I digress. Perseus, with Athena invisibly guiding him, she doesn't abandon him at this point. Some myths say she literally flies beside him, invisible to give tactical advice, finally locates the Gorgon's lair. Under cover of night, he spots the three monstrous sisters. Perhaps they are sleeping amid the remnants of an old temple or on a bed of seaweed in a cave, accounts vary. Luckily, when Perseus finds them, they're asleep. This is key. Facing even one awake Gorgon is suicide. Facing all three at once, forget about it. But the fact they're asleep gives Perseus a huge advantage. Now Perseus must execute the plan perfectly. He remembers Athena's instruction, do not look directly at Medusa, so he takes out that polished bronze shield and uses it like a mirror. The area might be dim, maybe it's a starry night or just before dawn, but presumably the shield catches enough moonlight or starlight to reflect the scene. Through the reflective surface, Perseus can see the forms of the Gorgons lying among ragged rocks and perhaps the stone forms of their victims. He carefully hovers or tiptoes closer. This is a heart-pounding moment. One wrong step, one clink of his sword against a stone, and if they wake up, they could open those deadly eyes. But Perseus is careful, so careful. Guided by Athena's steady hand, he approaches Medusa, who is distinguishable from her sisters maybe by her smaller size, since she's mortal, or because Athena quietly points her out. He does not look at her directly, only at her reflection on the shield's surface. It's like walking backward toward a sleeping cobra while looking in a hand mirror. Talk about nerve-wracking. When he's close enough, Perseus raises the adamantine sword. He positions the shield to keep Medusa's image in view so he knows exactly where to strike. Then, with all his might, he brings the blade down in a swift, clean arc, swipe, and slices clean through Medusa's neck, decapitating her in one blow. For a split second, there's silence. Then all hell breaks loose. Medusa's body convulses, gushing blood. Her snake hair hisses and writhes even as her severed head falls away. The other two Gorgons, Stheno and Euryale, wake up to the awful sight through whatever sense. Maybe they heard the swish or felt something. They see their sister dead and an invisible assailant. Perseus has probably by now slammed Hades' cap on his head to vanish. They let out a piercing shriek of rage and grief that echoes across the land, a noise so terrible that it could freeze anyone in terror, and probably did scare the living daylights out of Perseus. On top of that, something utterly unexpected happens amid the chaos. From the blood gushing out of Medusa's neck, two beings spring forth. One is the magnificent winged horse Pegasus, pure white with great flapping wings. The other is Chrysaor, a golden sword-wielding giant, or sometimes depicted as a human hero type. See, unbeknownst to anyone, Medusa was pregnant at the moment of her death, impregnated by Poseidon, the sea god, in an earlier encounter. The children of that union remained unborn until Medusa was slain, and suddenly out they came, fully formed from their mother's severed neck. It's easily one of the weirdest births in mythology, like a grotesque magic trick. Slice, and out pops a flying horse and a giant. I always imagine some ancient Greek bard telling this part and the audience going, wait, what? Pegasus whinnies and immediately soars into the sky, free as a bird. Chrysaor, the golden giant, likely stumbles off to eventually have a life of his own. He later becomes father of Geryon, another monster, but that's another story. Perseus is like, okay, didn't see that coming, but no time to think, because now Medusa's two very angry sisters are hunting for the intruder. Perseus quickly grabs Medusa's severed head, careful to avoid looking at it. Her face is still as terrifying as ever, but limp now, eyes closed, thank goodness. He stuffs the head into the kibisis bag and seals it. At that very moment, Steno and Euryale are flapping their golden wings, slashing around with their claws, trying to find whoever murdered their sister. Perseus slips on the helm of darkness and vanishes from sight. The Gorgons can't see him at all now, and presumably they don't have daredevil-like super hearing. They lash out blindly, literally. Perseus, holding his breath, uses the winged sandals to lift off and get out of dodge fast. The enraged Gorgon sisters can't catch him. They howl in frustration, their cries echoing. Eventually, they likely vent their sorrow by, smashing some stone statues around them or just sobbing monstrous tears. It's kind of sad if you think about it. From their perspective, some punk just snuck in and killed their beloved sister. But for Perseus, it's a huge win and a huge relief. He actually did it. He killed Medusa and lived. Now begins Perseus's journey back home, which turns into a whole adventure of its own. He's got Medusa's head in a sack, a potent, dangerous artifact, and he's zipping through the air with those winged sandals, helm on head, basically invisible, which is good because he's about to encounter a few more potential threats on the way. One detour involves the Titan Atlas. Yes, the Atlas, the giant who holds up the sky on his shoulders. According to one version of the myth, told by the Roman poet Ovid, Perseus, flying back towards Greece, passes over the land of Atlas, which is way in the far west, northwest Africa in later geography. Atlas is huge and currently not in a great mood toward visitors, because there's a prophecy that a son of Zeus will one day steal the golden apples from his sacred grove, apples that belong to the gods. Atlas had been warned specifically, "Oh Atlas, a son of Zeus will come to cheat you, beware." So Perseus, breezing along, sees this massive figure holding the sky and maybe thinks, "Hey, that's Atlas. Perhaps I could ask him for hospitality for the night. I could use a rest." Despite being invisible, Perseus likely makes himself known. Maybe he removes the cap momentarily and politely greets Atlas. He says something like, "Hail, great Atlas, and Perseus, son of Zeus. I've been on a long journey. Might I find shelter in your lands tonight?" The moment Atlas hears son of Zeus, he recalls that prophecy. This must be the thief foretold. Atlas basically goes, "No way. I don't care who you are. You're not staying here. Be gone." In fact, Atlas, being a titan and all, likely tries to grab or swat Perseus away, not taking any chances. Perseus initially tries to reason. "I am not here for any golden apples or whatever. I just need a place to sleep." But Atlas is adamant and enormous, maybe even threatening to squash Perseus like a bug. Now, Perseus is brave but not stupid. He knows fighting Atlas is impossible. However, he has a certain something in his bag that can solve the problem instantly. It's drastic, but effective. As Atlas looms over him, Perseus says, "All right, have it your way. Since you won't give me a place to rest, let me give you a resting place." And with that, he reaches into the kibisis and pulls out Medusa's head, flashing its dreadful face at Atlas. The Titan barely has time to register what Perseus is holding before Catham. Atlas begins to turn into stone, starting from his head and shoulders, which begin to crag over and merge with the sky, down through his massive body. His beard and hair transform into a thick forest, his arms and shoulders into great craggy cliffs. Atlas is literally petrified, turned into a colossal stone mountain. In this mythic moment, Atlas essentially becomes the Atlas Mountains, which run across northwest Africa. His head and shoulders are now a mountain range that still holds up the sky, but in a literal geological way. On one hand, it's a bit of a nasty trick on Perseus' part. Like, he didn't need to kill Atlas, one could argue. But on the other hand, Atlas was being hostile and Perseus was like, "Look, I'm too tired for this nonsense." So yep, Perseus effectively mountainized a titan. So if you've ever wondered why those mountains in Morocco/Algeria are called the Atlas Mountains, well, there's your mythological explanation. After that stone-cold encounter, pun totally intended, Perseus continues his journey. Next up, as he flies over the African coast, the Kingdom of Ethiopia, which in myth refers to a region on the Red Sea, possibly modern-day Eritrea or northern Ethiopia, he witnesses a scene that makes him do a double take. He sees a young woman chained to a huge rock by the sea, waves crashing at her feet. She's breathtakingly beautiful, even in her obviously distressed state, with her hair blowing in the sea breeze and tears in her eyes. This is the Princess Andromeda, without hesitation. Because he's a hero and also, let's be honest, immediately smitten, Perseus swoops down to see what's going on. You can imagine Perseus, heart pounding at the sight, calling out, "Hey, are you okay? Why are you chained up?" Between sobs, the girl, Andromeda, might cry out, "Go away, please, just leave, the monster will be here any minute. It will kill you too." But our hero Perseus isn't about to abandon her. He shouts back, "I'm not leaving you. Tell me what's going on." At this, Andromeda, probably shocked that someone actually showed up to help, quickly explains her plight. And what a plight it is. Andromeda is the daughter of King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia of Ethiopia. Her mother, Cassiopeia, committed the classic Greek sin of hubris. Cassiopeia boasted that she, or in some versions, that her daughter Andromeda, was more beautiful than the Nereids, the sea nymph daughters of Poseidon. These nymphs, being prideful themselves and rightfully adored for their beauty, were super offended and went to their dad Poseidon, complaining, "Cassiopeia insulted us." Poseidon, not known for a chill temper, decided to punish the whole kingdom for this insult. He sent a giant sea monster, often referred to as Cetus, to ravage the coasts of Cepheus' kingdom. The people lived in terror as the sea monster flooded the land and devoured anyone it could reach. Desperate, King Cepheus consulted the oracle of Ammon, and the oracle decreed that the only way to appease Poseidon and get rid of the monster was to sacrifice Andromeda to it. I know, brutal, punish the innocent daughter for the mother's bragging. But that's how these myths roll. Virgin sacrifice to appease angry gods and all. So poor Andromeda was chained to a rock on the shore as a sacrifice to the sea monster. You can imagine how horrifying that is. She's essentially live bait. Her parents, Cepheus and Cassiopeia, are watching from a vantage point, hearts breaking but feeling they have no choice. What a messed up situation, right? Andromeda barely finishes her explanation when, right on cue, the sea monster emerges from the waves, roaring and slithering toward its prey. The timing is so cinematic. Perseus appears just in time, like the classic hero arriving at the last second. Perseus turns and sees this leviathan approaching. It's massive, scaled, with a gaping maw and teeth like razors, maybe with fins and a serpent-like body. Imagine something like a kraken or giant sea dragon. Now, Perseus has to act fast. He shouts to Andromeda's parents, who I imagine are watching in horror from a cliff or the city walls, and strikes a deal. "I will slay this monster and save your daughter, but if I do, she will be my wife." King Cepheus, desperate to save Andromeda, yells back, "Yes, yes, anything. She's yours if you save her." Queen Cassiopeia also nods frantically. I mean, better a living daughter married to a stranger than a dead daughter. Andromeda herself is probably both terrified of the monster and astonished by this stranger's boldness. But she certainly isn't objecting to not being eaten alive. With the agreement made, Perseus springs into action. He leaps into the air with his winged sandals and draws his sword. The monster surges forward, and Perseus, being a total show-off, in the best heroic way, dives and attacks. Now, accounts differ on how this battle goes down. In one version, Perseus engages the beast directly, slashing at it, dodging its snapping jaws, maybe stabbing its eye or something. Think of a high-flying aerial battle, Perseus zipping around like a fighter jet and the monster rearing and lunging. At one point, the monster nearly capsizes him with a mighty splash, but our hero is agile. In another version, Perseus decides, you know what, I have a certain petrifying head in my arsenal. Let's use it. As the sea monster rears up from the water, Perseus reaches into the kibisis, pulls out Medusa's head, and aims it at the beast. Zap! The monster meets the gaze of the dead Gorgon and instantly turns to stone. One moment it's a thrashing, living horror. The next it's a massive stone statue frozen in the surf. The ocean waves break around this newly formed rock structure that was the monster. Thereafter, that stone form might even become a bit of the coastline or a small island. For storytelling flair, Let's say Perseus first tried to fight the monster fair and square, trading a few blows, but realizing the risk to Andromeda, chained right there, he decided to end it quickly with the Medusa head. So one quick flash of those snaky peepers and the monster is Denizo. However it happens, the result is the same. Perseus defeats Cetus and frees Andromeda. He either breaks the chains using his sword or maybe the parents rush in with a key. Andromeda is saved from a gruesome death at the very last minute. The onlooking crowd, I'm sure a lot of people gathered at a safe distance to watch, morbidly enough, erupts in cheers and astonishment. Their princess is saved. And here is this stranger, a shining hero from the sky, who accomplished it seemingly with ease. Andromeda, overcome with relief and gratitude, and Perseus, dazzled by her beauty and bravery, basically fall in love on the spot, or at least, in strong like. Perseus makes good on the reward. He fully intends to marry Andromeda. Her parents gratefully agree, though there's a bit of awkwardness because, unknown to Perseus, Andromeda was technically already engaged to someone else. Oh, during the celebrations of Andromeda's rescue, just when you think we can have a nice happy moment, Phineus shows up. Phineus is either Andromeda's uncle or her former fiancé. In some versions, he's her uncle who wanted to marry her, which, while gross to us, wasn't unheard of in royal families back then. In other versions, he's simply a prince who was engaged to her. Phineus is livid that Andromeda is being given away to this random hero. He storms in with a band of armed followers to Cepheus' palace, where Perseus and Andromeda's wedding celebration is either underway or about to start. Picture Phineus bursting into the banquet hall where everyone is praising Perseus. He's like, "What the heck? Cepheus, you promised Andromeda to me." There's a record scratch moment. All the guests gasp. King Cepheus stammers that circumstances have changed. Minor detail, Phineus, you kinda allowed your almost wife to be chained to a rock without attempting to save her, so maybe pipe down? But Phineus is beyond reason. He's insulted and enraged, and possibly a little embarrassed that he didn't try to save Andromeda himself. Phineus draws his sword, his men do the same, and chaos erupts. He basically tries to assassinate Perseus and claim Andromeda by force. One could imagine him yelling, "Get him! Kill him!" to his followers. A brawl breaks out in the palace, weapons clashing, tables flipping, people screaming and ducking for cover. It's a full-on melee. And here's Perseus, probably thinking, "Are you kidding me? Can I not catch a break and have one nice dinner?" But our boy is nothing if not resourceful. Perseus fights back, of course, but he's outnumbered by Phineus's posse. There might be dozens of them. Cepheus's guards are trying to contain the scuffle, and Cepheus himself likely doesn't want to kill his brother, if Phineus is his brother or kinsman, but he also doesn't want Perseus to die after saving his daughter. It's a mess. Swords clang. Guests run for cover. Andromeda is screaming in fear that this could end horribly. Realizing that conventional fighting might get him killed, there are too many attackers. Perseus decides to use his ace in the hole one more time. Amid the struggle, he shouts, "Everyone down! Close your eyes!" maybe giving a heads up to his allies and to Andromeda and her parents. Then, in one dramatic move, he reaches into the kibisis and pulls out the head of Medusa, holding it high for all his enemies to see. Phineus and his band of thugs have that classic "oh, sure" moment, but before they can look away, it's too late. They all meet the gaze of the Gorgon's head. Instantly, each one of them turns to solid stone. Phineus is frozen mid-rant, sword raised. His soldiers likewise fossilize in various aggressive poses. The palace suddenly falls quiet except for the whimpering of a few frightened guests. What was moments ago a violent fight is now a tableau of stone statues scattered around the banquet hall. Perseus calmly lowers Medusa's head and caps it again. When the dust settles, King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia are just blown away, right? Their hall is filled with stone figures of Phineus and his men, like some bizarre art installation. While they're probably a bit uncomfortable with the method, they're undoubtedly relieved that Phineus, the traitorous guest, has been dealt with and that Perseus is safe. The celebration likely resumes, albeit in a different mood, and probably in a different location, since, there's a bunch of fresh statues cluttering the dining room now. Servants are going to have a fun time cleaning that up. True to promise, Cepheus and Cassiopeia officially give Andromeda's hand to Perseus. So Perseus and Andromeda get married. It's actually one of the happier romantic pairings in Greek myth. No trickery, no tragedy befalling them later, as often happens. They genuinely seem to love each other, and Andromeda willingly leaves her homeland to be with Perseus. After these detours, Perseus figures it's about time to head home to Seriphos and check on his mom. Remember Danae? Yeah, she's been anxiously awaiting news, possibly still trying to fend off the unwelcome advances of Polydectes. In fact, in Perseus's absence, Polydectes might have gotten more aggressive in pursuing Danae. Some versions suggest Danae had to seek refuge in a temple to avoid him, or that Polydectes even attempted to force her into marriage once he thought Perseus was out of the picture for good. So, Perseus, now accompanied by his new wife, Andromeda, flies back to Seriphos. When he arrives, he indeed finds that Polydectes has been harassing Danae. In one telling, Danae and her protector Dictys have been hiding in a temple of Athena to escape the king's clutches. Polydectes has been spreading the word that Perseus likely died on his fool's quest. I mean, who would expect otherwise? And he's been trying to pressure Danae into marrying him, saying something like, "Your son is gone, you have no one to protect you now, become my wife." Danae, faithful to her son and certainly not interested in Polydectes, keeps resisting. Suddenly, in the throne room, or perhaps the courtyard, of Polydectes, who should walk in but Perseus, alive and well, holding a big mysterious bag and accompanied by a lovely foreign princess to boot. I like to imagine Polydectes nearly falling off his throne at this sight. The king might sneer and say, "So, you survived. I assume you brought me a wedding gift?" Possibly Polydectes is in disbelief and quickly goes into denial mode, mocking Perseus. "You expect me to believe you actually got the head of Medusa in that bag?" Polydectes is also furious inside, because Perseus's return means his plan failed. Danae, overjoyed, rushes to embrace her son. Perseus probably first ensures his mother is okay, then turns to confront Polydectes. The king, still arrogant, might bark at Perseus, "You dare return empty-handed?" or try to have his guards seize Perseus. At this point, Perseus has absolutely had it with this guy. He announces, "I have fulfilled my promise. I have brought you the gift I promised, the head of Medusa." Polydectes doesn't believe it. Perhaps he scoffs. "Show me then, if you're so confident." Well, Perseus is more than happy to oblige. He loudly tells everyone in the hall, the courtiers, the guards, whoever's around, "Cover your eyes." Now, the friends of Perseus, like Dictys and Danae, know something's up and shield their eyes or look away. Maybe they duck behind columns, not sure. Polydectes and his loyalists either don't have time or don't heed the warning. In a dramatic final move, Perseus reaches into the kibisis and pulls out Medusa's head one last time, revealing it in all its hideous, snaky glory. Polydectes and his court gasp, and then freeze. In mere moments, King Polydectes and every one of his cronies turn to stone, statues with expressions of shock and terror etched on their faces. Polydectes basically gets the ultimate punishment. He wanted to receive many gifts and people. Polydectes the receiver got what was coming. I imagine Perseus might have a grim sense of satisfaction as he watches the tyrant literally become a stone caricature of himself. Talk about getting stony revenge. And just like that, the evil king's reign is over. The threat to Danae is gone. The island of Seriphos is free from Polydectes' oppressive rule. The islanders who were loyal to Dictys rejoice, and Perseus effectively hands over the kingship to Dictys, the good fisherman who saved him and his mom so long ago. Because Dictys was Polydectes' brother and a beloved, upright man, the people gladly accept him as their new king. It's a bit of a Cinderella story for Dictys. One day a fisherman, next day a king, but hey, he earned it through pure kindness. At this point, Perseus has accomplished what he set out to do and then some. He eliminated the immediate threats. Medusa, quest complete. Phineas, future problem in-laws dealt with. Polydectes, tyrant removed. He's got his mother safe, a new wife by his side, and a boatload of newfound fame and respect. Now, there's the matter of all these supernatural items he's been carrying around. Perseus is a responsible hero, and these items belong to the gods and nymphs who lent them, so he doesn't keep them. He proceeds to return them. The winged sandals, the helm of Hades, and the magic Kibisis bag are given back probably via Hermes, who ensures they go to their rightful places. Hades gets his helmet back, etc. As for Medusa's head, that potent, horrifying artifact, Perseus isn't going to keep that around as a parlor trick. He gives the head itself to Athena as a dedicatory gift. Athena, who is quite pleased with Perseus, her plan to eliminate Medusa succeeded brilliantly, takes Medusa's head and places it on her aegis, the legendary shield or breastplate that she carries. So Medusa's snaky, petrifying visage becomes a fixture on Athena's shield, forevermore a weapon in the goddess' arsenal. In art and myth, the head continues to retain its power while Athena wields it, basically giving her an ultimate defense/offense in battle. There's a note of poetic, if cruel, justice here. Athena, who cursed Medusa in the first place, now wears Medusa's head as a trophy. One could say she literally wears her victory. It always struck me as a bit cold-blooded. Medusa had already been punished by being turned into a monster, and even after death, her head gets carted around as a weapon and trophy. In some later interpretations, especially by the Roman poet Ovid, Medusa was more of a victim than a villain, which makes her fate feel even more tragic and unfair. But in the context of the Perseus story, Medusa is simply the deadly beast that needed slaying, and Perseus isn't about to lose sleep over the moral complexity. With the adventure effectively over, Perseus doesn't just settle on Seriphos. Instead, he thinks of his grandfather Acrisius back in Argos. Remember that prophecy? The whole reason this happened? He likely wants to see his mother's homeland and maybe even reconcile with Acrisius, or at least prove the old prophecy wrong by showing he's not a threat. So Perseus, Danae, and Andromeda, and perhaps some of their entourage sail for Argos. When they get to Argos, however, King Acrisius is nowhere to be found. The moment Acrisius heard that Perseus was alive and coming his way, news travels fast, maybe via Hermes or via rumor of the heroic deeds. Acrisius panicked. He recalled the oracle's words, that he would die by his grandson's hand. Acrisius apparently didn't want to test fate, so he fled Argos entirely and went to stay in the neighboring kingdom of Larissa, in Thessaly, incognito, or perhaps to seek protection from friends there. Basically, Acrisius noped out of his own city to avoid Perseus. Perseus arrives to an Argos that's like, welcome home. Your grandpa took off. The Argive people probably would have made Perseus king then and there, since he's the heir. Danae was Acrisius' only child, after all. But Perseus doesn't assume the throne at this time. Instead, sometime later, Perseus learns that the king of Larissa is holding funeral games, athletic competitions in honor of a deceased relative. Perseus decides to go participate, partly as a hero who loves competition, and maybe partly hoping Acrisius might be there so he can talk to him. Indeed, Acrisius is at those games, hiding among the spectators, perhaps under an alias, but he's there. He still fears that prophecy, but maybe he never expected what happens next. During the discus throw event, Perseus steps up to compete. Now, Perseus is strong, half-god, remember? So when he hurls the discus, it flies far, perhaps a bit too far. It veers into the spectator stands. Accounts differ on why. Maybe a gust of wind, maybe an unintentional slip of strength, or the discus was misthrown. The heavy disc hurtles into the crowd and strikes an old man. That old man, of course, is Acrisius. The impact is fatal. Acrisius is struck maybe on the foot or head by the discus. Some say it hit his foot and the shock killed him, ancient sources vary. Others say straight up in the head, which would be instant death. Either way, the prophecy is fulfilled. Acrisius is killed accidentally by his grandson Perseus during a sports game. It's such a poignant twist of fate. All of Acrisius' extreme measures, locking up Danae, casting them into the sea, all of that only set the stage for this inadvertent reunion and accident. Fate basically said, I told you so. Perseus is absolutely devastated. This is not a triumph for him. It's a tragedy. He never wanted to harm his grandfather. In fact, he probably wanted to prove he wouldn't. so he's full of guilt and sorrow, even though it truly was an accident. The people of Argos and Larissa likely forgive him, understanding it was an act of fate, not malice. But Perseus is not comfortable inheriting a Chryseis throne under these circumstances. So what does he do? In a gracious move, Perseus refuses to claim the throne of Argos, which would have been his by right. Instead, he makes a sort of trade. There is another kingdom in the region, Tiryns, ruled by a king Megapenthes, who happens to be the son of a Chryseis brother, Proetus, basically Perseus' cousin. Perseus and Megapenthes arrange a swap. Megapenthes will take Argos, which he might have had a claim to anyway via his father Proetus, and Perseus will take over Tiryns, and perhaps also its sister city Mycenae. This way, Perseus doesn't rule the kingdom of the man he accidentally killed. It shows his character. He's honorable and doesn't want the stain of blood guilt on his rule in Argos. Megapenthes gets Argos without conflict, and in return he gives Perseus rulership of Tiryns. Perseus then went on to found the great city of Mycenae, or at least greatly fortify and expand it. Mycenae would become a legendary city in its own right, the center of King Agamemnon's rule generations later, and the namesake of the Mycenaean civilization. According to myth, Perseus had the help of the Cyclopes, the giant one-eyed master builders, to build the massive walls of Mycenae. Those walls were so immense that later Greeks thought only giants could have built them, hence calling them Cyclopean walls. There's even a cute mythological etymology. Some say Perseus named Mycenae after a mushroom, myx in Greek, that he picked up on the site, or after the cap, myx in another dialect, of his scabbard that fell to the ground there. Either way, he established his dynasty there. Perseus and Andromeda settled down in this new kingdom, Tiryns/Mycenae, and they had a bunch of children, often collectively called the Perseidae or Perseides. They had sons with names like Perses, Alcaeus, Sthenelus, Electryon, and a daughter, Gorgophone, which means Gorgon Slayer, named in honor of Dad's big feet. How cool is that for a name? One son, Perses, they left with Andromeda's parents before leaving Ethiopia, and Perses is said to be the ancestor of the Persian people. The very name Persia was linked to Perses, giving the Greeks an explanation for the Persians' origins. As descendants of Perseus, how flattering for them, right? Another notable descendant. Their son Electryon became the grandfather of Heracles, Hercules. Let that sink in. Perseus is actually the great-grandfather of Hercules. In family tree terms, Perseus' son Electryon had a daughter Alcmena, who became the mother of Heracles, with Zeus again doing his casual swan visiting routine, but that's another story. So Perseus started a heroic dynasty. In fact, many noble Greek families traced their lineage back to Perseus and Andromeda. Perseus's descendants ruled Mycenae for generations, until Eurystheus and beyond. Now, despite most Greek heroes having some sort of tragic end, Perseus's story wraps up more happily. There isn't an account of him dying violently or tragically. It seems he lived a long, reasonably good life as a just king. And when the time came, the gods placed Perseus and Andromeda, and some say even Danae, as well as Cepheus and Cassiopeia, among the stars as constellations. Indeed, if you look up at the night sky, you can find the constellation Perseus, holding something that represents Medusa's head, the star Algol, which interestingly is a variable star that dims and brightens. Ancient astronomers nicknamed it the demon star, associating it with the blinking eye of Medusa. There's the constellation Andromeda, portrayed as a woman in chains. Nearby are Cepheus and Cassiopeia. Her mother's constellation is that distinctive W-shaped cluster of stars. Even the sea monster got its own constellation, Cetus, in that part of the sky. It's like the gods commemorated the whole saga by turning it into a cosmic picture book for us to remember. Throughout history, the Perseus myth remained hugely popular. Ancient Greeks loved it. It had everything: prophecy, monsters, romance. It was a favorite subject in art. You'll see Perseus and Medusa on Greek vases, sculptures, temple carvings. Fast forward to the Renaissance. Artists and sculptors revived these myths like crazy. There's a very famous bronze statue from the 1500s by Benvenuto Cellini standing in Florence, Italy, depicting Perseus holding up Medusa's freshly decapitated head, with her body at his feet. It's quite a striking statue, and a little gruesome, with blood streaming from Medusa's neck. People in the 16th century walking under that statue must have been like, whoa, intense. So yeah, this story has inspired creative minds for millennia. Even today, Medusa's image is iconic. Ever seen the Versace logo? Yup, that's Medusa's head minus the gore. And here's something I find satisfying about Perseus's tale. Unlike a lot of Greek heroes, Perseus actually gets a happy ending. Think about it, Hercules, tragic end, burns to death, taken to Olympus. Okay, semi-happy, but after extreme trauma, Theseus, tragic end, falls off a cliff, loses family. Jason, betrayed Medea and ends up a lonely old man crushed by his own ship. Bellerophon tried to fly to Olympus, got thrown off Pegasus and ended up crippled and miserable. But Perseus? Perseus lives, wins, and settles down with his love, ruling wisely. No tragic adultery, no going crazy, no murder spree on his conscience. Well, except those folks he turned to stone, but they did attack him first. By Greek standards, Perseus' story is one of the rare hero sagas that isn't a total tragedy. It's actually kind of uplifting. Andromeda and Perseus supposedly lived out their days happily. When they died, as I mentioned, the gods immortalized them in the stars. In a sense, they got the closest thing to immortality a mortal couple could hope for, living on in legend and in the night sky. So, we've covered a lot. A prophecy that backfired spectacularly, a miraculous conception, a heroic quest with divine gadgets, practically a mythological James Bond gadget reel there, one of the most famous monster slayings of all time, a dramatic rescue of a princess, and multiple instances of creative use of a severed head as a weapon. Seriously, Perseus turned so many people to stone with Medusa's head. He was not shy about whipping that thing out. This story has it all, and importantly, it ends on a high note. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this journey through the Perseus saga. We covered a lot of ground and sea and sky, from the bizarre beginning with an overprotective grandfather and a golden rain baby daddy, to the dramatic, stone-cold finale. It's a story that definitely keeps your attention. It's no wonder people have been retelling it for almost 3,000 years. Now, if you've been listening to this as you wind down for sleep, I hope this mythic adventure, with all its monsters and heroes, told softly, has relaxed you or at least made for an interesting late-night story. There's something almost comforting about these ancient tales. They've survived so long, being passed from one generation to the next, like a big human lullaby, albeit a lullaby with more decapitations than usual. And despite all the wild events, in the end, good triumphed, love endured, and our hero found peace. So on that note, I'll say good night. May your dreams be guarded from any Gorgons. Just keep a mirrored shield by your bed. Haha. Thank you for hanging out with me and listening to one of my favorite myths. Sleep well, and I'll catch you next time with another legendary tale. Good night and sweet dreams.